Hi, this is Jim McKenzie, here with you again for another Worship in the Gap. Let me ask you a few questions. What's 3 times 4? What's the capital of South Dakota? In what direction will the sun set tonight? Now, would you say that you know the answers to these questions, or that you hope you know the answers? Well, of course, you would say that you, with great certainty, know these answers. You see, real certainty doesn't require hope. I don't need to hope that 3 times 4 is 12, or that the sun will set in the western sky. But I do need to hope that my life matters, that I'm loved by my family and friends, and that my faith will be seen in my actions. Some people equate faith with certainty, that sense of conviction that comes from having a well thought out explanation. They think that if they can explain everything, then all is well. If they can explain how the world came into being, why bad things happen to good people, or what the purpose is for our existence. If they can explain that, then maybe then they could have faith, and faith could be embraced. But there's a big difference between having knowledge and being able to explain something and having, say, wisdom. You know the old adage that knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad. Just because you know something and can explain it doesn't mean it necessarily adds to your life. For many of you, faith is a way of looking at life and seeing God's presence everywhere. I don't think faith has much to do with things like knowledge alone, explanations, and certainty. Faith is more that ability to take hold of life, even with all of your doubts and faith, all your doubts and uncertainty about faith. It's to trust the one that we cannot see. There's a story about someone I trust that you have heard of before. His name actually was Didymus. Didymus, which means the twin. But he actually went by another name that you're more familiar with. His name was Thomas. You may know him as Doubting Thomas. And I'd like to read to you that story from the 20th chapter of John. On the evening of that day, the first day of the week, the doors being shut where the disciples were for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood among them and said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. Then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. And Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, even so I send you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. If you forgive the sins of any, they are forgiven. If you retain the sins of any, they are retained." Now Thomas, one of the 12, called the twin, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples told him that we have seen the Lord. But he said to them, unless I see in his hands the print of the nails, and place my finger in the mark of the nails, and place my hand in his side, I will not believe. 8 days later, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them this time. The doors were shut. But Jesus came and stood among them and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not be faithless, but believing." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." This Thomas, this doubting Thomas, is really someone I resonate with. Here's a person who has questions and doubts, who needed proof. He was a 21st century man in a first century body. He measured things by the scientific method of proof. He wanted concrete evidence and perceptive judgment. Thomas, we could say, was a skeptic who refused to believe without direct personal experience. He would not believe that Jesus had appeared to the other 10 disciples until he could see and feel Jesus' wounds. Thomas raises for us the question of the place of doubt in the life of faith. And you know, this challenges a dark little secret in the church, that we all have doubts and questions, every one of us. Every person sitting next to you 6 feet away in church, the minister who stands up front, the people who are standing at the door handing out bulletins and taking up the collection. All of us have doubts and questions about some things. But what a shame that Thomas is the only one who's been scapegoated over the years as one who didn't have faith. What's always interesting to me is when people come together and they talk honestly and openly and vulnerably, and they say, well, to be honest with you, I've got some doubts about this. I still have questions. And that's when usually the other says, I do too. You do? Yeah, I thought I was the only one. No, Everyone has doubts and questions, and it's interesting when we share those with each other that we come to understand that we're just one more on the road seeking truth. Someone once told me that doubt is the ants in the pants of faith. It keeps us alive and moving. The opposite of faith is not doubt, it's apathy. And as long as you have your doubts and your questions, you're still in the game. So embrace your doubts and follow them. Let them lead you closer to the truth, because that's where God is. That's where God is. You know, at the heart of the gospel, it's not a set of propositions to be believed and explained. It's a relationship to be lived. The good news is that there is someone that we can trust, someone who had us in mind before we were even born, someone who called us into existence for a purpose, who loves us with a love that will never let us go, and who wants to live in us forever. Isn't it just God's nature to want to come to us, to seek us out wherever we are? And if you're wondering today whether that even includes you, then please know that you are never too far that God can't reach you. Just ask Thomas. And all we can ever do in response to this great initiative is to joyfully embrace God's presence, to live each day with gratitude, and to share the love that God has first shown to us. Oh, and by the way, the capital of South Dakota, it's Pierre. Hey, this is Jim McKenzie saying stay well, stay safe, and stay faithful. I'll see you next time in the Gap.